Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and watched something that would change human history forever. 7 massive alien ships appeared in the darkness above Earth. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each ship was 10 miles long and covered in strange lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. The alien ships moved without making any sound. They positioned themselves around Earth like predators surrounding prey. Their weapons pointed down at major cities around the world: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, all under the shadow of alien guns. Jack had been in the Navy for 30 years. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded ships in the deepest parts of space. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. His hand stayed steady on the control panel, but his heart was beating fast. The bridge crew worked quietly around him. Lieutenant Commander Betty Walsh monitored communications while Captain Frank Davis tracked the alien movements. Everyone knew they were witnessing something huge. The question was whether humanity would survive it. The first transmission came at exactly noon, Earth time. The signal was strong and clear, cutting through all radio frequencies at once. When the voice spoke, it was in perfect English with no accent or emotion. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet. You will listen and obey. This is Ambassador Zektar of the Galactic Council. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire." Jack felt his jaw tighten. The aliens spoke like humans were animals to be trained. There was no respect, no diplomacy, just cold commands. "You have 72 hours to surrender all military assets and submit to our authority. Your governments will dissolve. Your armies will stand down. Your people will accept their new status as subjects of the hegemony." The transmission continued for 10 more minutes. The alien explained how Earth would be divided into work zones, how humans would be relocated to serve alien needs, how human culture and history would be erased to prevent future rebellion. When it ended, the bridge fell silent. Jack looked at his officers and saw fear mixed with anger. These aliens had made a big mistake. They thought humans would just roll over and accept slavery. Betty spoke first. "Sir, we're getting reports from all over the planet. The alien ships have weapons locked on every major population center. One wrong move and they could kill millions." Frank pulled up tactical displays showing the alien fleet positions. "Admiral, these ships are massive. Our scanners show they have energy shields and weapons we've never seen before. If this turns into a fight, we're in serious trouble." Jack nodded but didn't show his worry. As a leader, he had to stay calm even when everything looked hopeless. "Get me a secure line to the Pentagon and patch me through to President Hamilton." Within minutes, Jack was on a video call with the most powerful people on Earth. President Lisa Hamilton sat in the Situation Room, surrounded by generals and advisors. Her face was serious but determined. "Admiral Morrison, what's your assessment?" she asked. Jack chose his words carefully. "Madam President, these aliens have superior technology and firepower, but they've also made some assumptions about us that might work in our favor." General Pete Rodriguez leaned forward. "What kind of assumptions?" "They think we're helpless. They think we'll just give up without a fight. That tells me they don't understand humans very well." Dr. Amy Brooks from the Department of Xenological Affairs spoke up. "The alien language patterns suggest they've done this before, many times. This is probably their standard procedure for conquering new worlds." President Hamilton stood up and walked to a wall map showing the alien ship positions. "What are our options, General Rodriguez?" The general looked uncomfortable. "Honestly, Madam President, in a straight fight we'd lose badly. Our most advanced warships are no match for even one of those alien vessels. They have 7. "What about our space defense systems?" asked Secretary of Defense Robert Cole. "Minimal effectiveness expected," Rodriguez replied. "Our orbital platforms were designed to stop missiles and small ships, not massive alien battle cruisers." Jack had been listening to this discussion with growing frustration. Everyone was talking about how hopeless the situation was. Nobody was talking about fighting back. With respect, I disagree with that assessment. The room fell quiet. President Hamilton raised an eyebrow. Go on, Admiral. These aliens are making the same mistake that bullies always make. They assume that because they're bigger and stronger, their victims won't fight back. But humans have never been good at accepting bullies. What are you suggesting? Asked the president. I'm suggesting we tell them no. The room erupted in worried voices. Several advisors started talking at once about the risks of provoking the aliens. Jack held up his hand for silence. Listen to me. These aliens have conquered other worlds using fear and intimidation. They show up with big ships, make threats, and expect immediate surrender. It probably works most of the time. But this is Earth, added General Rodriguez, beginning to understand. Exactly. This is Earth. We're the species that fought 2 world wars. We're the people who built nuclear weapons and space stations and walked on the moon. We don't surrender to bullies. Dr. Brooks looked worried. Admiral, if we resist, they could destroy entire cities. The death toll would be enormous. Jack felt the weight of those words. Millions of lives hung in the balance, but he also knew that slavery was worse than death for most humans. Doctor, if we surrender, what happens to humanity? We become slaves. Our children grow up in chains. Our culture dies. Is that really better? President Hamilton had been quiet during this exchange. Now she spoke with quiet authority. Admiral Morrison, do we have any chance of actually winning a fight with these aliens? Jack paused. This was the moment of truth. He could lie and give false hope, or tell the truth and risk panic. He chose truth. Madam President, I believe we have assets they don't know about. Weapons and defenses they haven't accounted for. If we're smart and brave, we might have a chance. What kind of assets? She asked. Jack glanced around the room. Some of these people didn't have high enough security clearance for what he was about to say, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Black projects, Madam President, programs that have been running in secret for decades. Projects designed for exactly this scenario. The president studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I want a full briefing on these assets within the hour. If we're going to fight, I need to know what we're fighting with. Yes, ma'am. And Admiral, I want options for evacuation of major cities. If this goes wrong, I want as many people as possible in safe locations. Understood. The meeting ended, and Jack returned to his ship. As he walked through the corridors of the Defiant, he saw his crew preparing for what might be humanity's last battle. They worked with grim determination. These were professional military personnel who understood the stakes. But Jack also saw something else in their faces. He saw the same stubborn defiance that had carried humans through every major crisis in their history, the same refusal to quit that had built civilization from nothing. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species. They were about to learn that humans were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, a species with nothing left to lose. Ambassador Zektar stood in the command center of his flagship and felt satisfied with his work. The massive ship stretched for miles in every direction around him. Its walls were made of metal stronger than anything the primitive humans below could imagine. Weapons powerful enough to crack planets lined the outer hull. The Hegemony Council had given him 7 of their finest warships for this mission. It was probably too many. Most species surrendered after seeing just one. But humans had shown some troubling signs in their brief history, so the Council wanted to be sure. Zektar studied the reports his intelligence teams had gathered about Earth. The humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. Their ships were clumsy things that burned chemical fuel and moved slowly through space. Their weapons were simple kinetic projectiles and primitive energy beams. Sub-Commander Vorthak, what is the status of the human fleet? Zektar asked. Vorthak consulted his data screens. Ambassador, they have approximately 200 ships in their space navy. Most are small patrol vessels or cargo transports. Their largest warships are less than half a mile long. Zektar nodded. And their planetary defenses? Minimal. Some orbital weapon platforms around their major worlds. A few missile stations on their moon. Nothing that could threaten our shields. Good. What about their ground forces? Numerous, but primitive. They still use gunpowder weapons and chemical explosives. No energy weapons of any significance. Their armor is basic metal alloys. Zektar walked to the main viewing screen that showed Earth hanging in space below. It was a pretty world with blue oceans and white clouds. Soon it would be another hegemony colony producing resources for the Empire. "Ambassador," said Communications Officer Gentar, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. The humans are trying to establish diplomatic contact." Zektar laughed. "Ignore them. Diplomacy is for equals. These creatures are about to become subjects of the Empire. They have nothing to negotiate." This was always the best part of a new conquest, the moment when a proud species realized they had no choice but to submit. Zektar had overseen the subjugation of 43 different worlds during his career. The process was always the same. First came denial. The new species would refuse to believe they were outmatched. They would make brave speeches about freedom and resistance. Some would even fire their primitive weapons at hegemony ships, achieving nothing but minor entertainment for the crews. Then came bargaining. They would offer treaties and trade agreements. They would promise to share their resources voluntarily if only the hegemony would respect their independence, as if the mighty empire needed permission to take what it wanted. Next was anger. This was when some species made their last desperate stands. They would throw everything they had at the hegemony fleet, sacrificing millions of lives for nothing. It was wasteful but sometimes necessary to break their spirit completely. After anger came depression, the realization that resistance was hopeless, that their civilization was ending, that everything they had built would be absorbed into the empire and forgotten. Finally came acceptance. The survivors would submit to hegemony rule. They would work in the factories and mines. Their children would be educated in hegemony schools and taught to serve the empire. Within a generation, most traces of their original culture would be gone. Zektar had seen this cycle dozens of times. Humans would be no different. Sub-Commander Vorthak, begin Phase 2 of the Intimidation Protocol. I want full active scans of their major population centers. Let them see our targeting systems lock onto their cities. Yes, Ambassador. The hegemony ships began broadcasting powerful scanner beams toward Earth. The humans would detect these immediately. Their primitive sensors would show targeting locks on New York, London, Beijing, and other major cities. The message would be clear: surrender or watch your civilization burn. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Krendak, "the human vessels are moving to defensive positions around their homeworld. Approximately 50 ships are forming a perimeter." Zektar smiled. 50 ships against 7 hegemony dreadnoughts. Do they think courage can overcome such overwhelming odds? "Should we eliminate them, Ambassador?" asked Vorthak. "Not yet. Let them maintain their defensive positions. It will make their eventual surrender more dramatic when they realize how useless their fleet is." Zektar reviewed the intelligence files on human history. They were a violent species that had fought countless wars among themselves. But they had never faced anything like the hegemony. Their largest conflicts involved primitive weapons and small numbers of soldiers. They had no experience with galactic-scale warfare. The report noted that humans had something called nuclear weapons. These were crude fusion devices that could destroy cities. Impressive by primitive standards, but useless against hegemony shields and armor. A human nuclear warhead would barely scratch the paint on a hegemony frigate. "Ambassador," said Gentar, "we're receiving an official response from the human government." Put it on screen. The viewing wall showed a middle-aged human female in formal dress standing behind a podium. Text at the bottom identified her as President Lisa Hamilton of the United Earth Government. She looked calm and determined as she began to speak. "To the representatives of the Galactic Council," she said, Earth acknowledges receipt of your ultimatum. We understand that you possess superior technology and firepower. However, humanity cannot and will not accept subjugation. Zektar felt mildly surprised. Most species spent their first response begging for mercy or trying to negotiate. This human was speaking as if she had choices. President Hamilton continued, "We propose an alternative arrangement. Earth is willing to join the galactic community as an equal partner. We can offer trade agreements, cultural exchange, and mutual defense treaties. But we will not surrender our independence." Vorthak looked confused. "Ambassador, are they actually trying to negotiate? Don't they understand their position?" Zektar studied the human leader on the screen. She didn't look afraid. She should be terrified. But instead, she appeared confident, almost defiant. "They don't understand yet," he said. "They still think this is a negotiation between equals. We need to educate them." The human president was still talking. "We ask that you withdraw your ships to a safe distance while our representatives meet to discuss terms. Earth has much to offer the galaxy, but only as a free world." Zektar had heard enough. He gestured to Gentar to cut the transmission. "Sub-Commander Vorthak, prepare a demonstration. I want you to target one of their smaller cities with a low-power energy beam. Something visible but not immediately lethal. They need to understand what happens when they refuse hegemony authority." "Which city, Ambassador?" Zektar consulted his tactical display. "There. That settlement they call Denver. Population approximately 3 million. Fire a warning shot across their tallest building. Make sure they can see the beam from orbit." "Yes, sir." The flagship's main energy cannon began charging. It would take several minutes to reach full power, but even a minimal blast would be enough to demonstrate hegemony superiority. The beam would slice through the atmosphere like a sword, missing the city by mere miles. Close enough to show what could happen, far enough away to avoid unnecessary casualties. Zektar believed in efficient conquest. Dead slaves produced nothing. Better to break their spirit with fear than waste them with actual violence. "Ambassador," said Vorthak, "weapon systems are ready." Fire. A brilliant beam of energy lanced down from the hegemony flagship toward Earth. It passed just west of Denver, Colorado, and struck an empty mountain range with devastating force. The beam vaporized solid rock and created a crater visible from space. "Now they understand," said Zektar with satisfaction. "Monitor their communications. I expect a surrender within the hour." But as he watched the tactical displays, something unexpected happened. Instead of panic and surrender, the human ships began moving into attack formations. Their ground-based weapons started powering up. Radio chatter increased dramatically, but it sounded more like military coordination than surrender negotiations. "Sub-Commander, what are the humans doing?" Vorthak studied his sensors with growing confusion. "Ambassador, it appears they are preparing for battle." Zektar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Every other species in the galaxy understood that resistance against the hegemony was suicide. What was wrong with these humans? "Perhaps they need a stronger demonstration," he said finally. "Target their lunar installations. Destroy one of their mining facilities." But even as he gave the order, Zektar felt the first stirring of doubt. In 43 previous conquests, no species had ever responded to hegemony intimidation with increased military preparation. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. Zektar was beginning to suspect it might be both. Colonel Nick Patterson walked through the deep tunnels beneath NORAD feeling like he was in a dream. For 30 years, he had guarded secrets that he hoped would never need to be used. Today, those secrets would either save humanity or prove worthless against alien technology. The elevator descended 2 miles into the mountain. Security checkpoints scanned his body, his DNA, and even his brainwaves before allowing him to continue. At the bottom, massive steel doors opened to reveal Project Lazarus Command Center. Dr. Karen Williams looked up from her workstation as Nick entered. She had aged since they last worked together, but her eyes still held the same sharp intelligence that had made her one of Earth's top weapons designers. "Nick, I was wondering when you'd show up. I assume you've seen the alien fleet?" "Hard to miss," he replied. "7 ships the size of cities parked over our heads. Please tell me Lazarus is ready." Karen smiled grimly. "We've been ready for decades. The question is whether it will be enough." She led him to the main control room where dozens of technicians worked at computer stations. Wall screens showed data feeds from across the solar system. To most people, it would look like routine space monitoring. Only a few dozen humans knew the truth. "Give me the status report," Nick said. "Gravitational mine network is fully operational. We have 127 units positioned throughout the solar system. Each one can generate a localized gravity field strong enough to crush a battleship." Nick nodded. The gravity mines had been his idea originally, disguised as deep space research stations. They had been deployed over 20 years. The aliens probably thought they were looking at harmless scientific equipment. "What about the lunar installations?" "Mass driver array is online and ready. 16 separate launch systems hidden inside mining operations. We can put projectiles anywhere in Earth orbit within 30 seconds. The mass drivers were Karen's masterpiece. Using magnetic acceleration, they could launch dense metal slugs at enormous speeds. The projectiles carried no explosives because they didn't need any. At those velocities, even a small piece of metal hit like a nuclear bomb. Defense grid status? All. Platforms active. The aliens think they're looking at orbital factories and communication satellites. They have no idea we've militarized the entire system." Nick walked to the tactical display showing the positions of both human and alien forces. The hegemony ships looked massive and threatening, but they were positioned exactly where Project Lazarus had hoped they would be. "Karen, how long have we been planning for this moment?" "Since the first SETI signals in the 1970s. The government realized that if aliens existed, they might not be friendly. Better to prepare for the worst and hope for the best." Project Lazarus had been created in absolute secrecy. Only the president, a few generals, and the project team knew it existed. Even Congress had been kept in the dark. The funding came from black budgets hidden inside other military programs. The first phase had been intelligence gathering. Radio telescopes and space probes had mapped every star system within 50 light years, looking for signs of alien activity. When they found artificial signals from multiple directions, the government knew Earth was not alone. Phase 2 was weapons development. The best minds in physics, engineering, and military science had worked to create defenses against unknown alien capabilities. Since they didn't know what aliens might bring, they prepared for everything. Phase 3 was deployment. Over 30 years, the weapon systems had been built and positioned throughout the solar system. To the public, they looked like peaceful space exploration. In reality, they were the most powerful military network ever created. "Nick, we're getting activation codes from the Pentagon," said Major Tom Bradley from his communications station. "All systems are authorized for immediate deployment." Nick felt his heart rate increase. After decades of preparation, they were actually going to use these weapons. "Confirm authentication and begin power-up sequences." Around the command center, technicians began the process of bringing humanity's secret arsenal online. The gravity mines started charging their exotic matter cores. The mass drivers aligned their magnetic rails. Defense platforms extended weapon arrays that had been hidden for years. "Sir," called Lieutenant Sue Morrison from her sensor station, "we're detecting movement from the alien fleet. One of their ships is charging some kind of energy weapon." Nick watched the tactical display as the hegemony flagship prepared to fire. "Target? Looks like Denver, Colorado. But the trajectory will miss the city by several miles." "A warning shot," Karen said quietly. "They're trying to scare us into surrendering." On the main screen, they watched a brilliant energy beam lance down from orbit and strike the Rocky Mountains. The explosion was visible from space, creating a crater where solid rock had been moments before. That's their idea of diplomacy, Nick said. Show overwhelming force and demand submission. Sir, called Major Bradley, we're getting reports from around the globe. People are panicking. The stock markets are crashing. Some cities are beginning evacuation procedures. Nick nodded. That was exactly what the aliens wanted. Fear and chaos would make resistance impossible, but they had made one critical mistake. Karen, what's the status on Phoenix? Dr. Williams smiled for the first time that day. AI network is fully operational and ready for combat deployment. Phoenix has been analyzing alien transmissions and technology for the past 6 hours. Phoenix was Project Lazarus's most classified element. True artificial intelligence had been achieved 15 years ago, but the government had kept it secret. Phoenix and its network of sub-programs had been designed specifically for warfare against technologically superior enemies. Put Phoenix on speaker. A calm, androgynous voice filled the command center. Good afternoon, Colonel Patterson. I have been monitoring the alien fleet and their communications. What's your assessment, Phoenix? The hegemony ships are powerful but not invincible. Their shield technology appears to be energy-based, which means kinetic weapons should be effective. Their armor is advanced, but has vulnerable points near the engine sections. Can we win a direct fight? With conventional weapons, no. With the Lazarus network, victory is probable but not certain. I recommend immediate deployment before they realize the true nature of our capabilities. Nick looked around the command center at the people who had spent decades preparing for this moment. They were scared but determined. This was what they had trained for. Phoenix, begin Phase 1 deployment. Activate all gravity mines and prepare mass driver targeting solutions. Acknowledged. Phase 1 deployment commencing. Across the solar system, devices that aliens had dismissed as primitive human technology began revealing their true purpose. Research stations unfolded weapon arrays. Mining platforms extended targeting sensors. Communication satellites activated military-grade. Electronics. Sir, reported Lieutenant Morrison, the alien fleet is detecting energy buildups throughout the system. They're beginning evasive maneuvers. Too late, Karen said with satisfaction. The mines are already locked onto their positions. Nick watched as the tactical display showed red targeting indicators surrounding each alien ship. The hegemony fleet was powerful, but they had made the classic mistake of underestimating their enemy. Colonel, said Phoenix through the speakers, I am detecting increased military activity on the planet's surface. The alien demonstration appears to have had the opposite of its intended effect. Nick smiled. The aliens clearly didn't understand human psychology. Threats and intimidation didn't make humans surrender. They made humans angry. Phoenix, what's the status of our stealth fleet? Captain Maria Santos reports all 50 ships are ready for combat. The alien sensors have not detected their presence in the asteroid belt. The stealth ships were another Project Lazarus secret. Built using technology reverse-engineered from crashed alien probes, they were invisible to most scanning methods. Each ship carried weapons designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in alien technology. Sir, called Major Bradley, we're receiving new transmissions from the alien flagship. They're demanding an immediate response to their demonstration. Nick walked to the communications station. It was time to let the aliens know that their intimidation tactics had failed. Open a channel to the hegemony flagship. Channel open, sir. Nick took a deep breath. What he said next would determine whether humanity lived free or died fighting. Hegemony Fleet, this is Colonel Nick Patterson of Earth Defense Command. Your demonstration has been noted and rejected. You have 30 minutes to withdraw from this solar system or face the consequences. There was a long pause before the alien ambassador responded. When he did, his voice carried disbelief and anger. Primitive human. You cannot threaten the mighty hegemony. Surrender now, or watch your cities burn. Ambassador, Nick replied calmly, you made 2 critical mistakes. First, you assumed we were helpless. Second, you threatened our home. Humans don't respond well to bullies. He nodded to Karen, who began the final activation sequence. You have 29 minutes to leave our system. I suggest you use them wisely. The channel closed, leaving the command center in tense silence. Around them, the most powerful weapons ever created by human hands prepared for their first and possibly last battle. Nick looked at his team and felt proud. They had spent their entire careers preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Now, it was President Lisa Hamilton stood before the cameras in the Oval Office, knowing that her next words would be heard around the world and across the galaxy. Behind her, the American flag hung motionless in the still air. In front of her, representatives from every major news network waited for what might be humanity's final official statement. She had spent the last hour in secure communications with world leaders. Prime Minister James Fletcher of Britain, Chancellor Angela Weber of Germany, President Chen Liu of the Pacific Federation, and dozens of others had all agreed. Earth would speak with one voice. The alien demonstration over Denver had been seen by billions of people. The massive energy beam striking the mountain range had sent a clear message: submit or die. But instead of panic, Lisa saw something else in the reports flooding in from around the globe. She saw anger. My fellow humans, she began, her voice steady and clear. 6 hours ago, representatives of something called the Galactic Council delivered an ultimatum to Earth. They demand our immediate surrender and the dissolution of all human governments. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over her audience. They have demonstrated their superior technology by destroying an uninhabited mountain range in Colorado. They believe this show of force will convince us to accept slavery without resistance. In the background, she could hear phones ringing as news organizations scrambled to cover what was undoubtedly the biggest story in human history. But Lisa kept her focus on the camera and the message she needed to deliver. They are wrong. Those two words carried more weight than any speech she had ever given. Around the world, humans stopped what they were doing to listen. Throughout our history, humanity has faced impossible odds. We have confronted natural disasters, deadly diseases, and wars that threatened our very existence. Each time, we have found the strength to survive and grow stronger. Lisa thought about the conversations. She had just finished with Colonel Patterson and the Project Lazarus team. For the first time since the alien ships appeared, she felt hope. The Galactic Council assumes we are helpless because our technology appears primitive compared to theirs. They assume we will surrender because they have bigger ships and more powerful weapons. They assume wrong. She stepped closer to the camera, her voice gaining strength. Humanity rejects the Galactic Council's ultimatum in its entirety. We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will not accept slavery under any circumstances. In the Situation Room below, General Pete Rodriguez watched the president's speech while monitoring global military preparations. Reports were coming in from every continent as armed forces mobilized for war. General, called Major Lisa Park from her communications station, we're getting confirmation from all allied nations. Military forces worldwide are moving to combat readiness. Rodriguez nodded. The president's speech was being broadcast on every frequency, including the ones the aliens were monitoring. Earth's response would be clear to everyone. On screen, President Hamilton continued her address. To the Galactic Council, we offer this counterproposal. Withdraw your ships from our solar system within 24 hours. If you wish to establish diplomatic relations with Earth, you may return with a proper diplomatic mission, not a fleet of warships. She paused, knowing her next words would either doom humanity or save it. If you choose to remain and threaten our world, you will discover why humans have survived every challenge our universe has thrown at us. You will learn that some species cannot be conquered, only destroyed. And if you destroy us, you will pay a price that makes victory meaningless. The speech ended, but its effects rippled across the globe immediately. In military bases from Alaska to Australia, soldiers prepared equipment that had been stored in secret for decades. In hidden facilities around the world, weapons systems that officially didn't exist began their startup sequences. Aboard the Hegemony flagship, Ambassador Zektar watched the human president's speech with growing disbelief. In 43 previous conquests, no species had ever responded to superior force with increased defiance. "Sub-Commander Vorthak," he said, "analyze that transmission. Are these humans actually threatening us?" Vorthak studied his data screens. "Ambassador, yes. The human leader has given us an ultimatum to leave their system or face military action." Zektar laughed, but it sounded forced even to his own ears. "Military action? What can they possibly do to us?" "Sir, our sensors are detecting increased energy signatures throughout their solar system. Multiple installations that we cataloged as research stations are showing military-grade power buildups." The laughter died in Zektar's throat. "Show me." The main tactical display lit up with red warning indicators. Dozens of positions throughout the human solar system were radiating energy signatures consistent with weapons systems. Not primitive human weapons, but something much more advanced. "This is impossible," Zektar said. "Our intelligence reports indicated they barely achieved faster-than-light travel. How can they have advanced weapons?" "Unknown, Ambassador. But the energy readings are definitely real." Zektar studied the display with growing concern. The humans had somehow hidden a massive military network throughout their entire star system. Either their intelligence was completely wrong, or these primitives were far more clever than anyone had imagined. "Communications Officer Gentar, open a channel to the human government." "Channel open, Ambassador." Zektar decided to try a different approach. Perhaps the humans needed a clearer demonstration of hegemony power. "Human leaders, you have made a grave error. Your defiance will only result in unnecessary casualties. I will give you one final opportunity to surrender before we demonstrate the true power of the Galactic Council." The response came not from President Hamilton, but from a military officer with cold eyes and a steady voice. "Hegemony Ambassador, this is Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. Your 24 hours has been reduced to 1 hour. Leave now or face the consequences." Zektar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: uncertainty. The human military officer spoke with the confidence of someone who held powerful cards. But what cards could primitives possibly hold against the hegemony? "Admiral," Zektar said, trying to maintain his authority, "you are outnumbered and outgunned. 7 hegemony dreadnoughts against your entire primitive fleet. Surrender now, and your people will be treated with mercy." Admiral Morrison's response chilled Zektar to his core. "Ambassador, you're not outnumbered. You're surrounded." The transmission ended, leaving the hegemony bridge in tense silence. Zektar stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what the human had meant. "Sub-Commander, run a full sensor sweep of this entire system. I want to know what they're hiding." The sweep took 20 minutes and revealed something that made Zektar's blood run cold. The human solar system wasn't just defended, it was weaponized. Every asteroid, every moon, every seemingly innocent installation carried military-grade equipment. "Ambassador," Vorthak said quietly, "we may have made an error in our assessment of human capabilities." Before Zektar could respond, alarms began, sounding throughout the flagship. Tactical Officer Krendak called out in panic. "Ambassador, we're detecting massive energy spikes from the third planet's moon. Multiple launch signatures." On the main screen, brilliant streaks of light rose from the lunar surface. Not missiles or energy beams, but solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. The mass driver rounds crossed the distance between moon and fleet in seconds. The first projectile struck the hegemony escort vessel, dominant force directly amidships. The kinetic impact punched through shields and armor like they weren't there, splitting the massive ship in half. The second round, caught the destroyer's swift retribution in the engine section, causing a cascade explosion that lit up space for millions of miles. "Shields up!" Zektar screamed. "Return fire on the lunar installations!" But even as the hegemony ships raised their defensive screens, more projectiles were already in flight. The human mass drivers had been firing continuously, sending wave after wave of kinetic rounds toward the alien fleet. The third round struck the battlecruiser Iron Hammer, punching through its forward section and causing massive decompression. The fourth missed its target, but passed so close to the flagship that the crew felt the ship shake from the gravitational disturbance. "How are they penetrating our shields?" Zektar demanded. Vorthak checked his instruments frantically. "The projectiles are moving at 12% of light speed. At those velocities, our energy shields can't deflect them effectively." Zektar realized with horror that the humans had found a weakness in hegemony technology that no other species had discovered. Energy shields were designed to stop energy weapons and slow-moving objects. They were nearly useless against relativistic kinetic projectiles. "All ships, evasive maneuvers, get us out of the firing solutions." But the hegemony vessels were massive and slow to change course. The human gunners had calculated their movements perfectly. Another round struck the heavy cruiser Dark Victory, severing its main gun array and sending debris spinning into space. "Ambassador," called Communications Officer Gentar, "we're receiving a transmission from the human admiral." "Put him on screen. Admiral Morrison AP." Captain Maria Santos had been waiting in the asteroid belt for over 6 hours when the call finally came. Her ship, the UES Shadowhunter, was one of 50 vessels hidden among the rocks and ice of the outer solar system. For 20 years, they had remained secret, invisible to both human and alien sensors. "All stealth units, this is command," came the voice of Admiral Morrison through her secure communicator. "Phase 2 is authorized. Repeat, Phase 2 is authorized." Maria felt her heart rate spike. After decades of training and waiting, it was finally time to test their capabilities against real alien technology. She activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We are now at combat alert. Prepare for engagement with hostile alien forces." The Shadowhunter was unlike any other ship in the human fleet. Built using technology, reverse-engineered from crashed alien probes, it could bend light around its hull to become nearly invisible. Its weapons were a hybrid of human and alien design, specifically created to exploit weaknesses in hegemony technology. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Dave Roberts from the weapons station, "all systems show green. Plasma cannons are charged and ready." "Navigation, what's our course to the target zone?" 43 minutes at maximum stealth velocity," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster. "We'll arrive just as the gravity mines activate." Maria nodded and settled into her command chair. The plan was complex but elegant. While the gravity mines and mass drivers engaged the alien fleet directly, the stealth ships would attack from unexpected angles. The aliens would find themselves surrounded and outgunned. Through the view screen, she could see the distant flashes of battle as the lunar mass drivers opened fire on the hegemony fleet. Even at this distance, the explosions were visible as brief. "Stars against the darkness!" "Captain, we're receiving telemetry from command," said Communications Officer Ben Clark. 3 enemy ships destroyed, 2 damaged. The aliens are trying to retreat." "Not if we can help it," Maria replied. "All stealth units, increase to attack speed. Don't let them escape." The Shadowhunter accelerated through the asteroid field with impossible grace. Her pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, navigated between floating rocks the size of mountains while maintaining perfect stealth. One mistake would reveal their position to alien sensors. "Captain," called sensor operator Tim Walsh, "I'm detecting the enemy fleet ahead. 3 ships remaining, all showing battle damage." "Show me." The main screen displayed a tactical view of the alien fleet. The massive ships looked wounded and desperate as they tried to maneuver away from the continuing mass driver bombardment. They had no idea that 50 human warships were closing in from behind. "Weapons, target the trailing destroyer. We'll hit them before they know we're here." Target locked, Captain. Maria waited until they were in optimal firing position. The stealth ships had been designed for exactly this type of engagement. Surprise attacks against larger, more powerful vessels. All units, this is Shadow Leader, attack pattern Alpha, fire when ready. 50 ships dropped their stealth field simultaneously and opened fire. The space around the hegemony fleet lit up with energy beams and projectile weapons as the human attack force revealed itself. The alien destroyer Quick Strike took multiple hits from different directions. Its shields flared and collapsed as human plasma beams burned through its armor. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as internal systems overloaded. Direct hit on Target 1, reported Dave Roberts. Enemy destroyer is breaking apart. But the aliens weren't helpless. The remaining hegemony ships returned fire with their massive energy cannons. Brilliant beams of destruction lanced out toward the human stealth fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Maria ordered, as an alien beam passed close enough to her ship to light up the hull sensors. The UES Swift Arrow wasn't fast enough. An energy beam from the hegemony flagship caught it directly, vaporizing the entire ship in a flash of superheated plasma. 49 human vessels remained. All units, scatter and regroup. Don't give them concentrated targets. The stealth ships spread out in 3 dimensions, making it impossible for the aliens to target them effectively. They darted between the massive hegemony vessels like fighter planes attacking bombers, too small and fast to hit reliably. "Captain," called Tim Walsh, "I'm reading massive energy buildup from the asteroid belt. The gravity mines are activating." Maria smiled grimly. The aliens had been so focused on the stealth ship attack that they hadn't noticed the real trap closing around them. Throughout the solar system, devices that had masqueraded as research stations for decades began revealing their true nature. Exotic matter cores that had been charging for years reached critical mass. Gravitational field generators that could bend space itself came online. The first gravity mine activated near the hegemony battlecruiser Eternal Glory. Space twisted around the alien ship as an artificial black hole formed directly ahead of its flight path. The massive vessel tried to change course, but its momentum carried it forward into the gravitational anomaly. The laws of physics took over. The battlecruiser stretched like taffy as tidal forces tore it apart at the molecular level. Within seconds, a ship that had terrorized dozens of worlds was compressed into a sphere of super-dense matter barely 10 feet across. "Target eliminated," reported Dave Roberts with satisfaction. "1 mine, 1 battlecruiser." The second gravity mine caught the damaged flagship as it tried to escape toward the edge of the solar system. Ambassador Zekatar's vessel found itself trapped in a gravity well that pulled it inexorably toward destruction. But the hegemony ship was more powerful than the others. Its engines screamed as they fought against the artificial gravity field. For a moment, it seemed like the massive vessel might escape. Then the third gravity mine activated. Caught between 2 gravitational anomalies, the flagship was torn apart by conflicting forces. Its hull cracked along stress lines as competing. Gravity fields pulled it in different directions. Emergency escape pods launched frantically as the crew abandoned ship. "That's what you get for threatening Earth," Maria said quietly. But her celebration was premature. Long-range sensors detected new contacts approaching from deep space. More hegemony ships were coming, and these were moving much faster than the First Fleet. "Captain," reported Tim Walsh, "I'm reading 12 heavy cruisers approaching from the outer system. They'll be here in 6 hours." Maria felt her stomach sink. The stealth fleet had been designed to fight small groups of ships, not entire fleets. 12 heavy cruisers would be more than they could handle. "Communications. Patch me through to Admiral Morrison." "Channel open, Captain." "Admiral, this is Shadow Leader. We've eliminated the immediate threat, but long-range sensors show reinforcements approaching." "Big ones." Morrison's voice crackled through the communicator. "Confirmed, Captain. We're tracking them, too. Return to base and prepare for Phase 3. "What's Phase 3, sir?" There was a pause before Morrison answered. Phase 3 is when we stop playing defense and take the fight to them. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. Taking the fight to the aliens meant leaving the solar system. It meant using weapons and strategies that had only existed in theoretical plans. It meant risking everything on one massive gamble. Understood, Admiral. Shadow Fleet returning to base. As her ships formed up for the journey home, Maria looked back at the debris field that had once been the Hegemony Fleet. Twisted metal and frozen atmosphere drifted silently through space, all that remained of the alien force that had threatened Earth. But she knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would return in greater numbers, with better intelligence about human capabilities. The next battle would be much harder. Lieutenant Kim, set course for Luna Base. Best possible speed. Aye, Captain. The stealth fleet disappeared into the asteroid field, leaving behind empty space and the wreckage of alien ambitions. But in the distance, new lights were approaching. The hegemony was coming in force, and this time they would be ready for human tricks. The question was whether humanity would be ready for theirs. Deep in the NORAD command center, Colonel Patterson watched the tactical displays with growing concern. The gravity mines had been a complete success, destroying the alien fleet with minimal human casualties. But the approaching reinforcements changed everything. "Dr. Williams," he called, "how long to recharge the gravity mine network?" 72 hours minimum, she replied. "Those exotic matter cores need time to rebuild their energy reserves." "And the mass drivers?" "Operational, but we're running low on ammunition. We can handle maybe one more engagement before we need to resupply." Patterson nodded grimly. The Human Defense Network had been designed to stop one large attack, not a sustained invasion. If the aliens kept coming in waves, Earth's hidden weapons would eventually be exhausted. "Colonel," called Major Bradley, "we're receiving a transmission from the approaching alien fleet. They're demanding immediate surrender and threatening to destroy every human settlement in the solar system." Patterson almost laughed. After what had just happened to their advance fleet, the aliens were still trying intimidation tactics. "Open a channel to their fleet commander." "Channel open, sir." "Alien fleet, this is Colonel Patterson of Earth Defense Command. You have just witnessed the fate of the last group that threatened our world. I strongly suggest you turn around and go home." The response came in a voice that was colder and more controlled.